Hello and welcome to the VST Roundup. We are recapping all the action from week 8 of the high school football season. It's been an amazing run so far, and there are some exciting moments that are setting up battles in leagues. It is exciting. As always, joining me is Kenny Hodges and Kaylie Harden. First, before we jump into anything, how are you guys doing?
I'm fresh off of a Brown win against the 49ers, no less. So I'm about as lit as a girl can be on a Sunday evening.
I'm doing great. Same here. Just had a great win today. Well, we at the time that we recording this thing, man. But I'm gonna save that. I'm gonna save that Jets energy for this week. Y'all better stay tuned. But man, like I say every week, anytime we get to talk about these our high school kids out here doing their thing on a week to week basis, it's always a good weekend. It's always a good time. And I'm ready to roll, man. Let's go.
All right, let's jump in. So, out of all the action, we'll start West Valley, Valley Mission, East Valley, just because a lot of the action was in the other two leagues of the big boys. So, West Valley, United Hills visited Taft and kind of showed the Jekyll and Hyde of Taft for what it has been. It was a 64-22 win. Bit of a beatdown there. El Camino was the away team, as they have been, against Birmingham. That was a 49-0 win for Birmingham. Keep going. They keep doing it. This defense shutting everybody down. And we'll see what happens as they round out their last 2 weeks. Wrapping up the West Valley League action, Cleveland visited Chatsworth in a bit of a fight in the trenches. It was a 28-21 final there for Cleveland Cavaliers on top. Over in the Valley Mission, the Valley Mission, Van Nuys went into Canoga and again did what everybody's been doing. It's what you're supposed to do when you have a program that's doing that. 37-7 final there. Kennedy visited Sylmar, and this one showed that you should not sleep on Sylmar. They can ruin someone's season. It was a 36-28 final for Kennedy. They came out on top, but that one score shows this Sylmar team does not really mess around. Kennedy keeps its hopes alive as they have a big matchup next week. Save San Fernando Panorama for last. North Hollywood visited Verdugo Hills. Verdugo Hills seemingly kept North Hollywood under wraps. It was a 14-0 final there. North Hollywood on top. Usually you think if they're going to get the run game going, they might put up a number on them. That game looked like it was tight throughout. And Grant visited Pauley, and the Parrots came out on top, defended their home field. It was a 21-7 final there. Now, our two game of the weeks, we had a co-game of the week. Chavez visited Arleta, and they had hopes, and they had their sights set on making noise and potentially trying to put their name in that contention spot for the league title. Arleta's defense clamped down. It was a 10-0 final there. We'll go a little bit more in depth on that later. And finally, our nightcap for the game of the week. San Fernando went into Panorama, and it was a bit of a shocker. And if you look at the score without looking at what happened, you will be a little surprised. It was a 35-15 final there. San Fernando Tigers on top. I can't wait to get a little more in depth on that. That'll be one we talk about when we get to our game of the week. And the other game I was at was Village Christian hosting Ontario Christian in a battle to kind of see if they can climb up the ranks in that Ironwood League. Ontario Christian just too big up front, not allowing anything to happen. 29-9 final there. Village falls. And that is the quick rundown. Kenny, you've always got some news and notes. Take it away.
We'll start in the East Valley. NoHo with their win over Verdugo Hills, that 14-0 win. NoHo snaps a 2-game slide in the East Valley. It's been a season of up and downs for that NoHo program. Been dealing with injuries, been dealing with some depth issues. It's been hard for them to be consistent, but they've got a real shot to end the season on a high note. Coming here down the stretch as they'll take on Arleta next week on senior night. Moving over to Grant and Poly. Poly with a 21-7 win over Grant. Poly continues to have a surprisingly good season, better than what we thought they might do in the East Valley as they move to 3-1 in the league. The big news out of this game with Grant dropping to 1-8, they kind of sitting precariously on that playoff bubble, on that D3 bubble. They might need to get a win over Chavez to kind of be able to sneak into that D3 bracket as we get to the postseason, as this will be their final crack to try to impress and make a move before the end of the regular season. As we'll get into with Chavez Arleta with a 10-0 shutout win in a big game against Chavez, one of the games of the week. Chavez, still young team. Got to learn how to close out games. Still got to learn how to finish. That's the last piece of that puzzle before you kind of become that winning program to kind of take a seat at the top of a league. And they're getting there. But speaking of youth, as we'll get into with this game, Jose Rosas had the only touchdown in the game. Might be giving us a preview of what's to come in this Arleta program over the next couple of years. Moving on to the West Valley. Cleveland with a 28-21 win, that Cleveland 28-21 win over Chatsworth. Interesting news coming out of this game is just the idea that it was a sloppy game, a choppy game, but the seniors led the way for Cleveland as they kind of have been all season long. All 4 of their touchdowns were scored by their senior contingencies. Donovan Powell was a rushing score. Ajayi, Okalola, and Hall all had touchdowns to kind of lead the way. And for Corey Hall, his 88-yard performance, he breaks 1,000 all-purpose yards on the season, continuing to put the ribbons and bows on what has been a stellar career at Cleveland before he moves on to play big-time college ball. Looking at Birmingham and Elko, another shutout, another dominating defensive performance by the Pats. Through 3 games in the West Valley, they've only allowed 7 points in these games. They have stifled and strangled their opponents in the city section, more importantly in the West Valley so far this season. And the Granada 64-22 win over Taft. Highlanders continue to be road warriors. If they're going to get into that open division, if they were going to find a way into that open division for playoffs, it's got to be, you got to win the tough games. You got to put wins together. And this team remains unbeaten away from John Elway Stadium, improving their record to 4-0-1 on the road though so far this season. And they look to kind of cement themselves as being sitting in that top 8 as we roll around to the postseason. In the Valley Mission, that 36-28 game between Kennedy and Sylmar was a wild game. I watched a lot of that game. It was a wild game, a lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppy play back and forth between the two teams. But Kennedy did what you're supposed to do. If you have designs on winning the league title, sometimes you got to win those games. Sometimes you got to win the ugly ones. And they stayed unbeaten in the Valley Mission. Van Nuys beating Canoga 37-7, a big win for the Wolves. Another team that sort of has surprised us this year with how well they have played at times. And another notch in their belt kind of helps move them a little closer away from sitting on that bubble. And at this point, with their record being where it is, I think it might be safe to say that they are going to be one of those teams that gets into D3. And so that's big for that coaching staff taking over in the first year to be able to get this team into the postseason. And at San Fernando, as we'll get into a little bit, I'll touch on a bit. The co-game of the week, San Fernando 35, Panorama 15. Big win for San Fernando. Big win for those San Fernando seniors. Panorama has been handed their first loss of the season, and the Tigers keep their Valley Mission Championship hopes alive because there's a big one coming up next week that we'll touch on. And just touching on the southern section super really quickly, Sierra Canyon continues to dominate. They go to Alamany and do what we thought they were going to do. Another shutout win, another dominant defensive performance. You know, they've sort of positioned themselves to be a real challenger to make a run in the top division in the southern section come playoff time. And now, having seen what happened between Bosco and Mater Dei, they might really actually have a shot to give one of those teams some trouble if they see them in the semis or the finals come playoff time. Chaminade in that rivalry game with Notre Dame, it was a wild one. Chaminade had a big lead, had to hold on. Still Pizzelli brought the boys back in the second half. They held on for a 35-28 win. And as Arshavir will kind of get into, Village just couldn't deal with Ontario size. But again, Chase Everett is the future of that program. As Coach Prime says, get us now. Because you can say the same thing about Chase Everett. Get him now because it won't be easy dealing with the Crusaders over the course of the next couple of years. Those are my news and notes for week 8 in the city section and the southern section.
All right. And so we'll roll right into some in-depth coverage. So Kaylie happened to be at Cleveland Chatsworth. This was one she was excited about. Hey, it was close. It was tight. So take it away.
Yeah, I was really excited to go see Chatsworth in Cleveland. I've only seen glimpses of them this season, and especially Cleveland just completely dominating this year. I was really excited to see the show that they might put on against Chatsworth. And I've only seen glimpses of Chatsworth like in that homecoming game against Elko. So I was really excited to see Isaiah Rameau. But my main takeaway from this game on Friday was pretty lackluster. To be honest, the game did start out pretty strong offensively. You have your usual subjects putting on for Cleveland, Corey Hall, Donovan Powell, and Emmanuel Okaloa. They both had good offensive performances throughout the game, I would say, when there was an offensive performance to witness it all. And the game started out with a really strong defense by Cleveland. The Chancellors, they weren't really able to make much yardage down the field. They were really just struggling for inches, it seemed. But within the first quarter, we had a score from both teams, one by Emmanuel Okaloa for Cleveland first, and then Benjamin Gomez for Chatsworth. And then moving into the second quarter is when things really started to get sloppy. We really started seeing things break down at times when they didn't. You were really just waiting for one of these teams to show that there was going to be a winner here. And it was disappointing to start the game with a bad fumble by Cleveland. Chatsworth was able to run the ball back. We had another TD by Benjamin Gomez. But Chatsworth's defense then really started to activate. They tried to hold off Corey Hall, the whole how the Instagram at goes, can't hold Corey. And they did, but only for a second. And then, Corey Hall just showed them who he was. He got another touchdown. So this game is still tied moving into halftime. Second half starts. We had a really nice punt return at Cleveland and finished it off. Then we had a conversion to really separate them from Chatsworth. So they were up 8. But then the defense really just started to break down on both sides. There was no stopping either team at this point, but unfortunately the offense was so sloppy. We didn't really have that amazing high scoring game. Both teams were able to put up a couple more touchdowns. And then the thing that really sealed it away was Corey Hall in the end zone as Chatsworth tried to score in the final minutes of the game. He got a TD on them when they needed to score to win. So Cleveland walked away with that one victorious. They continue their amazing season, but I will say they weren't performing like the Cleveland that I wanted to see, like the Cleveland that I've heard so much about from you guys so far this season. It wasn't an easy win for them. They really struggled, and you could see it. And going against Birmingham next week, they're going to have to fine tune a lot. This week should have been an opportunity for them to do that. They should have been getting it together, and they should have been at least making a presentation for great film going into next week. But unfortunately, I think that they're going to be down quite a bit as they suit up to face their next opponent.
Yeah, listen, one of the things that we've sort of complained a little bit about, or I've sort of been concerned about with Cleveland, even though they're 6-2 and this team is the real deal. We're not going to say that this is not a team that is incapable of getting into that D1 playoffs and really catching wreck and beating up on some teams, because this is a supremely talented team. If you've seen this team up close and personal, you know the weapons that they can attack you with. They've got a good young quarterback. He's mobile. He can make plays with his legs if he needs to. They've got a running back. They've got Corey Hall, who can dominate the game both ways. They've got other senior receivers who can pop plays at any given time and sort of kind of hold their own weight, so everything's not on number 11 to make every play. But the problem is there are times when you watch this team and it feels like, whether it be some of the mistakes they make, putting the ball on the ground, whether it be just sort of blowing assignments and giving up chunk plays to opponents that they shouldn't be, when you know the team is good enough to kind of get off the field and get the ball back to their offense in advantageous positions, and sometimes they just don't. You worry about the fact that it feels like this team sort of plays up and down to their competition. They'll play up against the good teams, but then they'll play down again in teams against teams that they should beat. Unfortunately for them, this didn't turn out the way the Hamilton game sort of did, where that was a team they also should have went on the road and beat, but their mistakes sort of caught up to them in that game. It didn't happen to them in this one. But it's one of those things that they've got a couple of weeks now. They've got a big one next week against Birmingham, and we're fast approaching the postseason. There's a lot of seniors on this team that this is their last run. You got to get it together now. You got to lock in now, because you don't want to sit up there the first weekend of the playoffs and see yourself down 2 touchdowns in the third quarter and wondering where it all went wrong. They got to lock in now and sort of really get geared towards the postseason. I don't know if I'm expecting them to beat Birmingham, but I'm expecting a better effort and a cleaner game than I saw from them this week.
Yeah, I think like being at several Cleveland games last year, it was really high energy. It was really exciting to watch. And then like this week, with the exception of Corey Hall, who did have a great defensive performance, their defense just wasn't putting up the stops and the energy that we needed for their offense to really do what they needed to.
It really is time to turn your eyes to the postseason. We have 2 weeks left. 2 big games, and this is where you start to either chase that league title if it's there. If it's not, you're fine-tuning for postseason play, as it looks like the vast majority of our Valley teams are going to be playing postseason football. So there are some questions abound when we look up and down. And we jump into the first of our 2 game of the week, our co-games of the week. This one had the early kickoff, Chavez visiting Arleta, and it was, as one would expect with these 2 teams that lean on their defense and lean on their run. And that's exactly what we got. It was 3 yards in a cloud of dust for the vast majority of this game. The surprising thing was Chavez actually breaking out the pass and being successful. They didn't have a couple of those moments where you expect them to break one on the ground, but kept plugging away, and ultimately there were a couple of these moments that you don't know how it's going to turn out. So first half, just driving through, our Chavez literally early in the game had a 9-minute drive that was kept alive by a couple of third and long completion conversions. They had a fourth down conversion, but they weren't really able to get anything going other than just drain the clock. They kind of get going, and the only score in the first half was an Arleta field goal. And there was a moment, though, that you thought Arleta might score. They got the ball inside the Chavez 5 and then took a penalty, so that pushed them back 5 yards. And now they're running out of time. There was like 15 seconds to go, and they drew up a pass play, but Kennedy Duran's pass was intercepted end of the half. So 3-0 there. And it kind of kept going in these moments where the defense would bend and not break. Arleta had a big opening kickoff, the second half. Here we go. Another Chavez interception. And their defense is saying, no, not today. We're here to fight. But that, again, that Arleta defense just not letting anything happen, got the fourth down stop against Chavez, and then turned that into a 32-yard touchdown run. It was 10-0, and now are they going to shut it down? Which they actually did. I think it was the very next drive. Chavez looked like it was backed up. Short little pass taken. It was a 62-yard completion inside the Arleta 5. And you think, here we go. Chavez is going to score. It's going to be a one-score game. They get the touchdown maybe. At worst, they might get a field goal. But no, that Arleta defense literally just said, this is as far as you're getting. And 4 and out from that spot. And Arleta was able to take it and just kind of grind out the rest of that game. This is where their identity is. This is what has won them titles in the past. That defense is back. It's legit. And all they have to do is take care of North Hollywood, and they get another league title.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Arleta. Like I said, that's football, right? As me and Kaylie can attest to, sometimes the big games ain't gonna look pretty, but you take the dubs how you get them. Sometimes you got to win them. Sometimes you blow people out. Sometimes you got to just bend but don't break. Sometimes you got to scratch and claw, because guess what? At the end of the day, when you hold up that league championship plaque, nobody gives a crap if you won the game 10-0. What they care is that you won it, because as we've seen this year, one of the issues with Chavez has been a young team trying to ascend. The last part of getting to that pinnacle is learning how to finish. Something we've seen them do in the San Fernando game, something we've seen them do against Monroe, and now something we've seen them do against Arleta, is have the ability to show some things that they weren't able to show you last year when they were a team that stayed in the fight and would fight you tooth and nail, but they didn't have the ability to really move the ball without some things happening defensively for the other team, sort of missing assignments for them to kind of break things. They're showing you this year they can move the ball. They've got weapons. Kubias on the outside. They've got some kids. If you can get the ball in their hand, they can do some things. But the issue with them is never from inside, never from the 20 to the 20. It's when you get in the gold zone, if they can finish. And a lot of times this year, that's where you've seen things break down for them, where they've left points on the table. And when you do that, you're not going to beat a team like Arleta that is seasoned, that is have some kids that have been through the wars, that have been through the ringer, that are on their second go around at varsity level. Some of them been playing 3 years on the varsity level, that have taken their lumps, and they're used to this. They're used to getting it out the mud. It's fine. They'll play an ugly game, because if we don't let you score, then you can't win. So that's just what it is when you go against this Mustangs bunch. They can give it to you however you want it. You want a dirty, ugly game where we got to scratch and claw for everything? Well, you gonna break before we do. So, and that's the thing. Like, Chavez will grow from this. They've shown you at several points this year that they can take one on the chin and then come back and get better. And our lead is also showing you that they're not going to be a team that is going to be fun to deal with when they get to the postseason. Because, like I said, they're going to handle business the rest of the year. I'm confident in this bunch. They're going to do that. But when they get to the postseason, when those brackets come out and you see our leader across from you, just know you in for a fist fight when you play this team.
Yeah, we keep talking about, moving into postseason. It's really close. So a win is a win at the end of the day, right? And if you're going up against a worthy adversary, a tight win is still a win. And in the postseason, you only need to win by a point in order to move on to the next round. So fight tooth and nail for it.
By intro mile, you take it how you get it. Absolutely.
At the end of the day, that's all that counts. Whoever is the last man standing at the end of that. So the other game of the week we had, actually, before I run into the other game of the week, real quick, I'll give you some more in-depth on that Ontario Christian physical beatdown of Village Christian. It was a 29-9 final, but it really, really felt like the first half is where Village wasn't able to really figure anything out. They had a couple of big plays. I mean, you get the ball to Ryan DeLutri, and he's going to make something happen. But Chase Everett did not look comfortable at all, even when he had a little bit of time. And that's just something that this Ontario Christian front does. They were ruthless, and at the end of the second half, it looked like maybe Village had figured something out in terms of moving that football, but it just wasn't there. They did get in and eventually score. They had a field goal in the first half, and they got the touchdown second. But they just were not able to contain and protect Chase Everett and get him comfortable enough. There were some miscues here and there, but I chalk a lot of these kind of mental mistakes that I saw on Friday night. I chalk that up to playing a team that is kind of beating you up, and now you're pressing and trying to make something happen, and you might drop a wide open ball because now you're thinking, I got to catch this, instead of just catching the ball. Everett might hold on to the ball 2 seconds too long. It might sail throw. So these things kind of compound in these situations. But, that's not to take anything away from Ontario Christian. They came to play, and they did what they were supposed to. They took the game to the Crusaders, and they took the win. But ultimately, it's something that this Village Christian team should learn from and should grow on.
Absolutely. Like I said, it's a team. They're still young at the position that matters the most, and that is their quarterback. He was running for his life. It's going to happen. I think Village will concentrate and focus over the course of the next couple of years and making sure you fill out this program with kids that can sort of really amplify what you have at that position. This is one of those games that are going to be a teaching moment for that core group. Yeah, they're going to lose some senior leadership, but this kid is the future. Chase Everett at that position, and games like this will only serve to make him better. And I have no doubt over the course of the next couple of years, he's going to keep receipts for teams like Ontario when he sees them the next time around, and they're going to just get better and better. So watch out for Village. Like I said, this is a bunch that this is just the beginning of the way this program is going to go. So these losses, they're going to put them in their back pocket, and we'll see what's what over the course of the next couple of years with that kid at that quarterback.
Yeah, we will. But from there, I'm going to roll right into our nightcap for the game of the week. Panorama was hosting San Fernando. This game was kind of everything you hope for in a game of the week.
Mm-hmm.
It was a slugfest in the trenches. These teams just fight tooth and nail. And really a lot of what you kind of expect. You know, Panorama came out, and after a scoreless first quarter, Kaylie punches it in from the goal line. They convert 8-0. It's not to say San Fernando didn't come back. Second quarter was full of
they came back. Trust me, I'm gonna get into it. Let's.
Oh well, I'm gonna let you kind of really run with this in a minute. But that second quarter, San Fernando scored twice. Panorama came and scored again, had a 1-point lead at halftime. And you're thinking, okay, this is a typical Panorama game. Close at the half, and then they just wear out the opposition and run away at the end. But that's not what happened. Panorama ultimately did not score again. Early in the second half, Melvin Pineda for San Fernando, who scored the first 2 touchdowns for them, got his third of the game to give San Fernando the lead. And they would not look back. That was it was 22-15 and still close. You're thinking something's going to be good, but San Fernando capitalized. Their defense stepped up. They scored twice within 32 seconds off of turnovers and blew this game wide open. It was 35-15, and that's the way it ended. They ran away with it. I mean, in that moment, they ran away. Ultimately, I think this game's a lot closer than that score. But you can't make those mistakes. You cannot make those mistakes. 2 turnovers end up in your end zone. And now San Fernando is riding high.
Well, you stole a little bit of my thunder because I was going to kind of break down a lot of what went on here. But Panorama, the big question coming into this game, when we sit here and kind of sort of cultivate what we're looking for in games of the week. Yes, we're looking for storylines like Arleta and Chavez was big story because Chavez had a chance to kind of really cement themselves and sort of break through a ceiling for a program that it hadn't in reach heights that the program hadn't been. But when you look at this other reason why this was also game of the week or co-game of the week is because when you look at what was at stake for both of these teams, obviously San Fernando were coming into the game in a little bit more of a desperate position, having lost a close one to Kennedy when we kind of figured that this would be sort of the triangle of death at the top of the Valley mission in terms of who would sort of come out on top and maybe the team left standing. So they needed this game. And Panorama, for a lot of reasons, needed this game because, for one, it was the first real test of the year. Yes, they played Selmar. Yes, they played teams like West Adams and earlier in the season. But this was a game they were going against a real senior-laden bunch that they knew had every intention of coming in here to sort of end what they had, the momentum they had built coming into the season. And the game sort of played out as such. When you watch these two teams, it was a very defensive-laden game. wasn't a lot to be had because they were fighting tooth and nail. And it sort of felt like when you watched the game, it was like watching two boxers that sort of it was like watching a Canelo fight, watching two guys sort of kind of punch at each other to sort of figure out where you could find breaking points. What was interesting is these are two teams that you sort of kind of think of as smash mouth teams, but they sort of broke that mold in this game in terms of what ultimately broke the game open when we sort of start to see some action was when these two quarterbacks sort of showed that they could air it out and spread the defenses out when these teams were stacking the box with 8 and 9 men in the box, and they started throwing the ball all over, started chucking it all over the place. Matter of fact, the game went from a defensive battle where Panorama was leading and not much was happening to 3 touchdowns being scored inside of the last 2 minutes because Panorama goes down. San Fernando goes down and scores. They get on the board, and Panorama goes right back down, hits a bomb. They go up. You think that's going to be the last score of the half. They were going to take a 15-6 lead into halftime, and then San Fernando comes right back down the field. It's a bomb of their own to kind of put it in the end zone and kind of close the gap at halftime. So you sort of kind of saw the two teams were feeling each other out. Then they landed some haymakers. And then the question in the second half was going to be who's going to be the team to make the adjustments. Both these teams have the ability to, but it was going to be who was going to be the one to kind of sort of find a way to stymie what the other team had figured out about what you were doing defensively when the dam sort of kind of broke on the scoring at the end of the first half. At San Fernando, to their credit, leaned on that pass game that they have sort of been cultivating all year long. When we've seen them kind of get going is when they've been able to kind of get the ball, throwing the ball down the field. And that's what they did. They took the ball right down the field, 2-minute drive. They went right down, boom, opened the scoring again, took that 22-15 lead. And then from there, sort of Panorama sort of made their adjustments and sort of stymied them. But ultimately, if you're going to win a game, it's usually not just one phase of the game. When you go in, when it's two teams where you're really sort of you're trying to grasp at straws at who's better than who. And what ended up happening in this game was something that has sort of plagued Panorama at times over the course of the last couple of years is mistakes at inopportune moments. Credit to San Fernando, their fourth score was actually a punt return touchdown that sort of broke it open to a 2-score lead. And then on the ensuing kickoff, the kick returner, I don't know, it was sort of a brain fart moment. You go to field a kick. If you don't field it cleanly in that moment, trying to pick the ball up when guys are bearing down on you is probably the wrong thing to do. You're already backed up in your end, just fall on the ball. He tried to pick it up. He got his clock cleaned by the San Fernando defenders that were coming down the field. They picked it up, scoop and score, and now all of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, a game that was a 1-score game turns into a 3-score game, and you could feel all the air sort of kind of go out of Panorama's balloon, and that ended up being the final score. So it was the final score lies a bit about how close these two teams actually were. It was some of Panorama mistakes down the stretch that I know probably kept a lot of the players and the coaching staff up. And now, sort of what we sort of had alluded to going into this week, with this result happening the way that it did, sort of kind of sets up a chaotic situation now in the Valley Mission down the stretch, where San Fernando now gets to kick their feet up on their bye week, and they're going to be watching Panorama try to kind of get back on the horse and head to Granada Hills and go take on this Kennedy Cougars team, because if Panorama can kind of pick up the pieces and beat Kennedy, now you're talking about 3 teams heading into week 10 with 1 loss, having all beat each other in a round robin fashion in the Valley Mission, and who the heck knows where we go from there. So kudos to San Fernando. That was a big win. It was a big win for the seniors in that program, especially coming off of taking their lumps last year. And now we got to see where this goes now for Panorama. It'll be the first time this year we have to see them kind of get off the mat and kind of pick things up, having now taken their first loss. But it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
It is. And Kenny, you got your wish. You were hoping for the chance for some real chaos in that Valley Mission. And we're one game away from that happening.
And it's a very realistic possibility. Like I said, with these three teams at the top of the Valley Mission, it is really drawing straws. We could easily had a couple of things gone differently, a couple of bounces gone differently in that Kennedy San Fernando game. We could be talking about San Fernando now sitting in a position where they sort of kind of would have locked up the Valley Mission with this result, but Kennedy found a way to eke out that win. So when you look at these three teams, they all sort of mirror each other in terms of their experience, in terms of what they can do at the quarterback position, in terms of the weapons they have, the way they play defense, opportunistic defenses with all three of these teams. So we could be sitting here next week having this conversation about Panorama going to Kennedy and doing what San Fernando just did to them. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Very, very much so. So with all that, it was an exciting week. As we said, there was lots of action, lots of emotion, and we're getting ready to wrap up and fine tune for the playoffs. And you bet your butt we're doing the same thing. So on that note, we have our segment for Player of the Week with honorable mentions. For me, I initially really wanted it to be Melvin Pineda. He did score the San Fernando touchdown that gave them the lead they didn't relinquish. But ultimately, he's an honorable mention for me. It's that Arleta defense. The entire defense, they get the Player of the Week. For my nomination is them. Big shutout, big league matchup, and they stepped up and took care of an offense that was not really doing much.
Yeah, I'm not going to fight too much on there. I will say a nominee that I think is worthy of mentioning is Adrian Anguiano, the quarterback for San Fernando. And if you're going to go on the road and pull off a win against a worthy opponent that wasn't going to lay down for you, you need a senior, you need a leader to kind of help kind of get the ship righted. And when San Fernando's offense sort of looked listless because Panorama was doing what they do, which is strangling teams, he found a way to find receivers open. He stood up in the face of pressure, delivered the ball, got the team in position to put points on the board, especially late in that half, which really turned that game around. It turned the complete feeling of that game around when he started to make plays in that offense for San Fernando. So even though his numbers aren't gaudy, the moments that he provided in that game really sort of helped bolster San Fernando to a big win and keep their league title hopes alive. So he's my nominee for Player of the Week.
If I had to nominate any honorable mentions, I would say probably Corey Hall for that clutch time interception in the end zone at the Chatsworth game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, the kid, there's not much more we can say about him that everybody doesn't already know. But whenever you see Cleveland have any amount of success, his fingerprints are usually somewhere in a big spot in that game. He does something that turns the tide of a ball game every week. And it's not as if the other team doesn't know it. It's not as if they don't try to go away from him. But this kid is going to make something happen every time he takes the field. So he's always a good nominee for a Player of the Week in my book.
Yeah, he is. And there's a reason we've been singing his praises for over a year now at this point. With that, we thank everybody for watching. Like I said, we always say we love doing this because we love putting the spotlight on these kids, on these programs, on the things that they're doing. And we fully believe that they don't get it enough. And so we're going to continue to do that. But thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. And again, if you like what you see hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, notification bell so you know when these drop. And, yeah, there's 2 weeks left in the regular season, but we do not plan on stopping with football after the playoffs. As the playoff, we're going into the winter. You've got basketball, you've got soccer as the main 4, boys and girls, 2 each. So we're really excited about where we're going this year, and there's a lot more for us to bring for you guys.
And thank you to all the teams that love saying hi to us, coming up to us, giving us good content when we're on the sidelines. We love interacting with you guys. We love that you guys recognize us. We love that you guys are watching us or interacting with our content on Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, wherever you guys are able to find us. And, keep doing so. Keep leaving us comments. Keep letting us know if we're missing out on mentioning anyone that deserves some flowers, because there's only so many of us and our eyes can only be in so many places at once. So keep us on our toes.
Yeah, man. And thank you guys always for the support. So, because the more you support us, the more shine it puts on these young men and women that we talking about. So, on that note, peace.